My name is Emily, and if you had met me 3 years ago, you probably would have called my marriage stable. We lived in a quiet suburb outside Columbus, Ohio. We had been married for 11 years. We both worked full-time, paid our bills, and smiled through neighborhood barbecues and family holidays. From the outside, everything looked normal. But normal can hide 1,000 quiet disappointments. For years, I ignored little things because I believed marriage required sacrifice. When my husband, Daniel, made financial decisions without asking me, I told myself he was just more confident with money. When he interrupted me during conversations, I laughed it off. When he called our house my house, even though I had paid nearly half the mortgage for over a decade, I convinced myself he didn't mean anything by it. I kept choosing peace. Or at least, I thought I was. Looking back, I wasn't protecting peace. I was protecting everyone's comfort except my own. The first real crack appeared after Daniel asked for a divorce. There wasn't a huge fight. No dramatic confession. One evening, he simply placed a folder on the kitchen counter and quietly said, "I think we've grown apart." Those words hurt. But what came afterward hurt even more. As we started dividing our finances, I asked a simple question. "So, we'll split the house equally?" Daniel barely looked up from his coffee. "I don't think that's how it's going to work." I stared at him. "What do you mean? The house is legally mine." I actually laughed. Not because it was funny, because it sounded impossible. "I've been paying this mortgage for 11 years. You helped with expenses," he replied calmly. "But ownership is different." I suddenly couldn't hear anything else. My hands felt cold. My heart was racing. That night, after he left for work, I searched through every file cabinet in the house. Mortgage statements, closing papers, insurance documents, property tax records. I kept looking for my name. It wasn't there, not once. When we bought the house, I trusted Daniel to handle the paperwork because he had worked in banking. I remembered signing documents, or at least I thought I had. Now I wasn't even sure what I had signed. For 11 years, I had transferred money into our joint account every month. Half the mortgage, half the utilities, half the repairs. When the roof needed replacing, I contributed. When the kitchen was remodeled, I contributed. When property taxes increased, I contributed. But legally, I owned nothing. I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything. I simply made an appointment with an attorney. The lawyer listened carefully while reviewing every document. She never interrupted me. When I finished, she asked one question. "Do you have proof of your financial contributions?" I smiled for the first time in weeks. "I've kept every bank statement." She nodded. "Good. Over the next month, I gathered everything. Electronic transfers, canceled checks, tax records, home improvement receipts, emails discussing repairs, photographs, insurance payments." Every piece of paper quietly told the story of a woman who had invested in a home she believed was hers. Daniel had no idea. At home, we remained polite. We spoke about schedules, mail, groceries, nothing more. Silence became my protection. Friends kept asking if I was okay. I simply answered, "I'm taking one day at a time." Inside, I was rebuilding myself. My attorney explained that legal ownership wasn't always the end of the conversation. Contributions mattered. Intent mattered. Documentation mattered. Every meeting gave me something I hadn't felt in months. Hope. The court date finally arrived. Daniel walked in, looking confident. He wore the same calm smile he used during business meetings. He nodded politely, as though this were simply another appointment on his calendar. I sat quietly beside my attorney. My hands were folded. My breathing was steady. The judge reviewed our case carefully. Neither side interrupted. Neither side raised their voice. Hours passed as documents were presented. Financial records, mortgage payments, tax returns, bank transfers. The courtroom stayed almost completely silent. Then, near the end of the hearing, the judge looked directly at Daniel. He adjusted his glasses, opened one final folder, and asked one simple question, a question that made the entire courtroom go completely still. The judge looked at Daniel for a long moment before speaking. Mr. Carter, if your wife had no ownership interest in this home, can you explain why she consistently paid nearly half of every mortgage payment, property tax bill, insurance premium, and major repair for more than 11 years? The room became very quiet. Daniel opened his mouth, then closed it again. He glanced toward his attorney. No one answered immediately. The judge waited. Finally, Daniel said, "We agreed to share household expenses." The judge nodded. "I understand that." Then he asked another question. "Can you provide evidence that Mrs. Carter understood these payments would never create any equitable interest in the marital home?" Daniel looked through his papers. There was nothing. No written agreement, no emails, no signed acknowledgement, only silence. For the first time since our separation, I didn't feel small. I wasn't winning because I was louder. I wasn't winning because I embarrassed him. I was simply telling the truth. My attorney presented years of financial records showing my consistent contributions and our shared understanding that we were building a life together. She never attacked Daniel. She simply organized the facts. The judge reviewed everything carefully. After a brief recess, he returned with his decision. He explained that legal title was important, but so was the reality of a long marriage and the documented financial contributions made during it. The evidence showed that I had invested in the home in good faith throughout our marriage. The final property division reflected those contributions. I wasn't awarded everything. I never expected to be. But I received a fair share that recognized the years I had spent helping build our life. As we left the courtroom, Daniel walked beside me for a few moments. "I didn't think it would end like this," he admitted quietly. Neither did I. But I also realized something important. The courtroom hadn't given me my dignity. I had reclaimed it long before the hearing, the moment I stopped arguing and started documenting. The moment I chose preparation over panic. The moment I believed my own worth. A few months later, I bought a small townhouse. It wasn't as large as our old house. It didn't have a big backyard or a fancy kitchen, but every document carried my name. The first evening there, I sat on the living room floor, surrounded by unopened boxes. The walls echoed because there wasn't much furniture yet. Still, it felt peaceful. I wasn't afraid anymore. I planted flowers by the front porch that spring. Neighbors introduced themselves. Life slowly became quieter. Not because my problems disappeared, because I stopped carrying the weight of proving my value to someone who refused to see it. Sometimes people ask whether I regret not fighting harder during my marriage. I tell them no. I wish I had spoken up sooner. There's a difference. Boundaries are not punishment. They are protection. Marriage should be built on trust, honesty, and shared respect. When those things disappear, silence alone cannot save the relationship, but calm action can save your future. Today, every financial document I sign, I read carefully. Every important conversation is one I participate in fully. Every decision affecting my future includes my voice. Not because I expect the worst. Because I have finally learned that respecting myself isn't selfish. It's necessary. The judge's question didn't change my life by itself. It simply revealed something that had been true all along. Respect isn't measured by whose name appears first on a document. It's measured by how people treat the person standing beside them. And I will never again mistake silence for agreement or love for permission to disappear. If this story touched you, please comment and subscribe. I have one question for you. Have you ever stayed silent to keep the peace, only to realize it was costing you your self-respect? Let me know your answer below.